Good evening, everyone. I'm really glad that you came to hear this very special story of Jethro and what was really behind his conversion to monotheism, to join up with the Jewish people and give everything up. What exactly motivated him is somewhat hidden in the story. If you notice in the booklets, if you go right to the middle page, on the left side, page number 7 is really, that's where the English text is found. If I'm going to constantly be referring to that, so keep your finger on that page. At the same time, we're going to start with number 1. So the idea, before we go into the deep details of what the Kliyakar has to offer us in terms of insights, we have to understand that what the Jewish people said, what the Israelites said in the desert when they were offered the Torah, you won't find it in Parsha Yitro, but you'll find it later on in Mishpatim, in chapter 24 of Exodus, verse 7. We said, Na'aseh v'nishma. We will do and we will understand. We will hear. That's the word. Na'aseh is to do, and nishma is to hear, to understand. And the reason I want to introduce this whole story that the Kliyakar has with another idea I heard at my Shabbos table, and it was just absolutely fascinating, that these two words, Na'aseh v'nishma, represent the two, I won't even call them great, the two other major religions of the world that we know of, and that would be Christianity and Islam. And that the Jew, the Israelite, represents the balance between the two extremes. Because the word Na'aseh is related to the word Esav. He came out Isui. He came out finished, a finished product. He was full of hair, and you'll see Rashi. Let's look at number 1. First it says, right, that the Lord, all that the Lord spoke, we will do and we will hear. We said Na'aseh v'nishma. And I mentioned the word Na'aseh is related to Esav, as you see in chapter 25 of Genesis, verse 25, that he was completely like a coat of hair. So he was not only all red, emerged rudi, kulo k'aderet, but his name was Esav. Look at Rashi, the second part. Actually, the first part is going to be quite important as well. Because what is Esav? This is a sign. He was completely red. It's a sign he's going to be shofech damim. He's going to be a rotzeach. He's going to be a murderer. He's going to spill blood. It's going to be an important point. But the second part of the Rashi that I quote here, they named him Esav, Esau. They called him, why? Because he was complete. He was isui. He was finished product. Meaning, he was fully developed, but the point was that he felt there was no room for growth. He had it all, as he says later in life. There was no room for growth. And what are we? Just remember my Rosh Hashiva and the Rav I received smicha from, Rav Yitzhak Berkowitz. It's Judaism. It's all about growth. And to quote the Vilna Gaon, he says it's all about tikkun hamidot. It's all about personal growth and fixing your character. But when you feel you're complete, there's no room for growth. Okay, so Na'aseh v'nishma, that's that which we said. The Na'aseh is similar to Esav, called Christianity, and Nishma, Yishmael. The root of Yishmael, as you'll see in the third source on the sheet, Genesis 16, verses 11 through 12. Right? So the angel of the Lord said to her, behold, you will conceive and bear a son, and you shall name him Ishmael. Why? Kishma Hashem El Anech. Because God will hear your affliction. Shma. So Na'aseh v'nishma. The two extremes. But wait. Think about the two religions themselves. What was Esav? Esav, when God, we're going to look at number 4 now, the Medrash introduces the idea that God offered the Torah to the world, to all the nations. So there's several other nations mentioned in the Medrash, but I only took these two. God appeared to the children of Esau, the wicked, and said to them, will you accept the Torah? They said to him, they responded back to God, what is written in it? He said to them, you shall not murder. Interesting, isn't that their essence, right? We saw in Rashi that the fact when it said that he was ruddy, he was emerged ruddy, right? That means like red, like blood, because he was a murderer. They said back to him, the very heritage which with our father left us with was, by the sword you shall live. You'll find in Genesis 27:40. So what I'm trying to lead into is that these two religions, we'll get to Yishmael in a second, the very essence of who they were, they couldn't accept it. Of course, they have free will, and they could have accepted it, but the Yetzer Hara was so strong. They felt this is what they want to do, this is their essence, and there's no way they can accept the Torah. But trust me and believe me when I say that the 7 Noachide laws already command them not to murder. But they won't accept the Torah because do not murder, it's because it's their very essence. On the other hand, what about Ishmael? So it's on page 3, the second paragraph down. He then appeared to the children of Ishmael and he said to them, will you accept the Torah? And they wrote back, they responded, what's written in it? You shall not steal. So he said back to them, they then said back to Hashem, the very blessing that had been pronounced upon our father was, they use the word blessing, but it means the opposite. He shall be a wild ass of a man, his hand against everyone, as in Genesis 16, verse 12. So their religion is about submission, and they chop off hands of those that steal. It's all about submission. So just to get into these two ideas, the Arabs are the ones that call us thieves, because that's who they are. The Christians, they created a religion called love. But it's only to counterbalance the hate and the murder. And the Muslims, the same thing, with the whole submission thing. And to control yourself. It's the complete opposite. What is the Jewish Yetzer Hara? What is it about us? If we are balanced, because when we said Nasa v'nishma, what did Hashem say? Who told you my secret? Who told you my secret? It's the absolute balance. Think about it, just on another level. The Christians use a strictly solar calendar. The Muslims use a strictly lunar calendar. And we use that complete balance of a loony solar calendar. I call it loony because maybe that's how it's supposed to be pronounced, but a lunar solar calendar combination. So what's our problem? What's our biggest Yetzer Hara? You won't be shocked. It's very easy. The disputes between brothers. As we found with Yosef. So when we say Nasa v'nishma, what are we really saying? This construct of the word is we. We, right? Look at it again. This is in the first source. We will do, we will hear. It's the unity. Even when when Yaakov is telling over the blessings to the sons, and supposedly, as Chazal tell us, that he lost the ability to tell the end days. The truth be told, he told us the end days. It's clear as day. He says, gather all together, and I'll tell you the end days. I get goosebumps when I hear it, because he's telling you the end will come when you overcome all your hatred towards each other and you gather as one. So what did we say? Nasa v'nishma? What else? The Torah itself predicted what our nemesis, what our arch enemies in terms of theology would be. Look at number 5. And there you worship gods, man's handiwork, wood and stone. What do wood and stone represent? Of course, wood represents the cross, and stone represents Mecca. You're familiar with those two religions. And in number 6, again, and the Lord will scatter you among all the nations from one end of the earth to the other, and there you will serve other deities unknown to you or your forefathers, deities of wood and stone. I didn't mention which verses they are. You can find that in Deuteronomy 4:28, and again in Deuteronomy 28:64. So that's just an introduction. We haven't yet begun to scratch the surface. I want to bring a medrash, a famous medrash that we all are aware of. There are actually 3 opinions in this medrash. This is number 7, of what Yitro actually heard and came. And that's the language. And you can find it in Hebrew just below on page 4. So, the Kli Yakar is going to quote it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip myself over to the beginning of the Kli Yakar, and he's going to say like this. He brings this medrash. Ma shmua shma uba. What did he hear that he heard and he came? What was the rumor that he heard and that he came? And we're going to hear these opinions, and you may think, okay, so there's an argument. Each one of these rabbis is saying he only heard this. Well, why do we say that cannot be? Because if you look at the verse, it says very clearly, we're talking about on page 7, right? It says that Yisro heard everything. In Hebrew it says, V'yishma Yitro kohen midyan choten Moshe et kol. He heard everything asher also Elokim. LeMoshe ul Yisrael amo, ki hotze Hashem et Yisrael mitzrayim. I do want to focus, we're going to find out some of the deepest secrets to the actual names of God. Because it's true, he heard all that Elokim did. But I'll tell you now, just to, I don't know what's the word, so you're not on edge. Suspense. He didn't yet hear what Yud-Kei Vav-Kei did. He was in search of the King of Kings, of the God of Gods. He wanted to serve the All-Powerful, and he was on a search, and he served many different deities to find the true God. And even now, when he came, we're going to find out when he originally came, because he heard everything that Elohim did, he did not come to convert at this point. It's only later, we'll see in the narrative, that something changed. Right now, we're going to hear a machlokas, an argument. What did he hear? And that he came. Meaning, what motivated him to come had nothing to do with conversion. It had to do with the 3 items we're going to discuss, and that should take up a good 15-20 minutes, and then we're going to proceed. Rabbi Yeshua says it was the Milchemet Amalek. If you notice, if you just go back 1 sentence before our Parsha of Exodus 18, verse 1, you go back to the end of last week's Parsha, it was Amalek. So Amalek came to attack us, and Yisro felt, it's not right, I want to show some support for the Jewish people, and I'll come. So that's not what the Kli Yakar is going to say, but we see that Rabbi Yeshua says it was the war with Amalek that he had just heard, immediately before his coming. Rabbi Eliezer Hamadai says it was Matan Torah. So that's a big, we're not even going to discuss when he actually came. We're saying that he heard and he came. There's a great amount of discussion of when he actually did come. Was it before Matan Torah? Was it after Matan Torah? No. We're not going to discuss those details. And Rabbi Eliezer says it was Kriyas Yam Suf. It was the splitting of the sea is what he heard and he came. Well, guess what? We know that he heard everything because we just showed you, the Pasuk says. That's still the very first verse. The very first verse says, he heard everything that God did to Moses and to Israel. But God here is Elohim. Now, we ask, first of all, the whole world heard what happened on Har Sinai. Are you aware of that? And not only that, also at the splitting of the sea. If you go to, that would be number 8 on the source sheets. That's Exodus 15, chapter 15, verses 14 and 15. It says the peoples heard. This is through the splitting of the sea. Peoples heard, they trembled. Who are we talking about? We're talking about the whole world. A shudder seized the inhabitants of Philistia. Then the chieftains of Edom were startled. As for the powerful men of Moab, trembling seized them. All the inhabitants of Canaan melted. The whole world knew. So how can we have an argument what he heard? He definitely heard that. We're just proving that he heard everything. He also heard about the Yam Suf, and he heard about Home2Torah. So if that's the case, b'men nichleku, what are they arguing? Are they arguing, and what are they arguing about? So the Kli Yakar wants to point out from the fact that each one of them said, and he came, it must be what motivated Yisro to come. Something about each one. But what was the main motivation? He heard everything, but which one of these 3 things that he did hear, he heard them all, motivated him to come? So we're not arguing about what he heard, because everyone agrees that he heard, as the Torah says, everything. So he describes the Ikar Maklokas, the prime part of the argument, is what exactly did he hear that motivated him to do what? Not just to come. Who did he come with? He brought Moshe's wife, Tziporra, and the 2 children, Gershon and Eliezer. Apparently, as we read what the Kli Yakar has to say, his main motivation was to bring his wife and children. So everyone understood that Yisro came, V'yavo, Yisro says Yisro came, because of some novel idea of something that he heard. And who did he take with him when he came? He took Tziporra, Ashes Moshe. But what really motivated him to come with the wife of Moshe and his sons? So now let's go through each one. Rabbi Yeshua said it was the war with Amalek. Ki Amar Hashem, Shiyeh milchemet Amalek ma midor ledor. What did we read in the last word of last week's Parsha? That this war with Amalek will be every generation, constantly, right? If you want to look at the exact verses, look at chapter 17, verse 16. And he said, from the hand is on the throne of God, Hashem maintains a war against Amalek from generation to generation. V'yomer ki biyad al keis yad milchama laHashem ba'amalek midor dor. So, do you know where Midian, do you know where specifically Yisro lived? He lived amongst the Amalekites. And he said to himself, if this war is going to go on for generations, I better make an alliance. I better make sure my daughter marries the leader. And this way, if any time in the future I need what they call protexia, I will have a protexia. I'm going to do him a chesed. I'm going to bring his wife back to him and his children. And remember, his children are my grandchildren. They'll protect us in the future if there's ever a war against Amalek. So if you look in Samuel, right? Shmuel Aleph, this is number 9 on the source sheet. 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 5 through 6. And Saul came as far as the city of Amalek. What was Saul? He was the king, and he came to kill. He didn't succeed, but he came to fight the Amalekites. And he fought in the valley. And Saul said to the Kenites, who are the Kenites? This is the descendants of Yisro. Turn away and go down from among the Amalekites, lest I destroy you with them. And you did kindness with all the children of Israel when they went up out of Egypt. So Yisro himself was getting paid back the kindness that he did later on to his descendants and the Canaanites turn away from the midst of Amalek. So, what did Yisro think? If I don't return his wife and match them up again, my daughter to Moshe, so if there ever is going to be a war in the future, he's going to fight with me too. Therefore, I'm going to come with his wife and return her after the fact that he did send her away. But look, I'm doing the greatest chesed that one can do. Okay, so the second opinion was Rabbi Eliezer Hamadai, and he said it was Matan Torah, it was the giving of the Torah that Jethro heard and came. Okay, this is going to be a little bit complicated, but we have a verse in chapter 19 of Exodus, verse 15. It says that 3 days before the giving of the Torah, both men and women, married men and women, had to cease and desist from intimate relationships. Be ready for 3 days. This is chapter 19, verse 15. Do not go near a woman. Okay, don't touch your wives. There's a concept of tuma that comes from a balkari, from an emission of seed. It's not just the man that's affected, but also the woman. Of course, it's not really nogea today. It doesn't really affect us in the way, when we have a Beis HaMikdash, we have Kohanim that we're going to be giving truma to, and we do our korbanos, it's obviously going to have a greater effect. But even to Kanas Ezra, that Ezra instituted that all men, before they learn Torah and pray, must go to the mikveh. It's written in the Shulchan Aruch. But it was done away with on the level of a chiyuv. It's still a great blessing, comes upon any man that does this. But what was Yisro thinking? If the Jewish people have to refrain from intimate relations with their wives in order to receive the Torah, to have divine revelation, then Moses, my son-in-law, how much more so? Kol shekain. I understand he's married to her. I understand he sent her away. But that's no way to live. You need a woman in the house for camaraderie, for friendship, for love. Love is not about only about intimate relations. So he said, I'm going to bring her at least to live with him because of a great principle. You can find in Isaiah 44, verse 13, it's number 11, like the beauty of a man is to sit in the house. In Hebrew, Kitiferes Adam, according to the beauty of a man, is Lesheves Bayis. What's Lesheves Bayis? Rashi says, like the beauty of a man, this is a woman who is the beauty of her husband. She is called the house. She's in charge of the house. She is the Bayis. So it's even if there's not an opportunity, because Moses could be called upon at any second. God says, speak to the people. He's not giving him 3 days warning. He's giving him no warning. I want you to get up and speak to the people. So Yisro understood that, knew that, but still, Moses is not a complete person without his wife. Okay. The third opinion we said was Rabbi Eliezer said it was the splitting of the sea. Now this is the most fascinating thing. What was Yisro thinking? Well, according to the Medrash, which you can see quoted on that page, that he actually gave his wife a get. Whatever that means. He completely separated from her, and she was free to marry. We know in the Gemara, Chazal tell us that kosher lezavgam kekriyas yamsuf, that it's as difficult to make a match between a man and a woman as it is to split the sea. Correct? So what was he thinking? First of all, the Gemara tells us that this is the second match, not the first. Wait, you have your seatbelts on? It's not only the second match, it's the reunification with your first wife. If that's not as difficult as splitting the sea, but wait till you hear what he thought. He said that this idea, he understood that putting back a wife that was totally divorced, who was separated, and the separation was like the way that the sea was split. Not just the water was on one side and the water was on the other. The molecules themselves were split. You got to hear look at this in Hebrew. He says, "Shezivuk sheni zahainu machzir grushato." That zivuk sheni, it's not a second marriage of a new woman. It's your original wife. Lefi shepirud v'zivuk zeh doime lepirud v'zivuk shamei hayam. That the division that took place between that husband and wife was very similar. It was exactly like the splitting of the sea. Ki mitchila hayu hamayim mechubarim chibur tivi'i. That originally the water themselves were combined or connected in a very natural way. Just like when that ruach of Hashem, the ruach of Kina, whether it's vengeance or jealousy, it came and it placed a space between the molecules. Kasher over aleim ruach kinat Hashem litain revach bein hadbekim, between that which was clinging and cleaving together. Meyaz kasher lechabram. From that point, it would be very difficult to put them back together and make water again, or in our case, put it back and make such a beautiful relationship again. So even though Af al Pikain, even though that's what he saw wrong, guess what? He saw that God put the water back together, and it was even better than it was originally. When that sea calmed itself down, Ola Zvugam Yafa. It was put together better than before. So what did Yisro think? Look in Mishlei, that's Proverbs 27:19. First of all, where is man from? I think maybe we'll skip to 13 and we'll come back to 12. In Genesis 2:23, where the heck did we have woman anyway? She wasn't made from the mud. She wasn't made from the water. She was made from man's own flesh. Because this one was taken from Ish. Me Ish lukacha zot. That's where she was taken from. So to put them back together again, you would think very hard. It would be very hard. But if we go back to Proverbs, as in water, the face reflects another face. You put your face to look in a pool of water. So is the heart of man to another man. I mean, even a woman, right? This is like, to put them back together, you would think. I think they have a story about Humpty Dumpty. Sat on a wall, and he had a great fall, and who could put the egg back together again? But here, Yisro's thinking, if the water can come back together. See, he says, now, if it's impossible to connect that water together, not the water, the relationship together, that they would be able to live with love and friendship like they had originally, well, after he heard what happened at the Yam Suf, at the splitting of the sea, that after such a forceful separation, and guess what? It came back as if it was never separated. You have a crack in a wall and you can hire the best, or a crack in a table and you can hire the best artisan or craftsman. You'll always notice there's that crack that had been filled, right? You could see the original damage. But that water, you could not see the split. It was gone. It was like it was never there. So that brought hope. This is why Yisro brought his daughter to be with Moshe. He saw there was hope towards that Zivuk Sheni, to have her back again, and that it would even be better than it was before. And all because of Kriyas Yam Suf. He understood that it was all possible. And that's why he took Tziporra and the sons. Okay, that was also basically an introduction, because what we really need to put aside is the idea that this Medrash, at this point, he did not come because to convert. He came, according to the Kli Yakar's understanding of this Medrash, that it was for different reasons. And it was mainly to bring her, Tziporra, back. And if you read the verse, it's going to be so obvious, because at this point, he came because he heard everything that Elohim did. He didn't yet hear what Yud Kei Vav Kei did. So the Kliyakar says, there are several deep questions that we have to ask. Now, thank God he asked them for us, because no matter how many times we would have gone over it, I don't know if we would have asked the same questions. Right? We understood that he heard everything that Elohim did to Moses and to Israel. So I'm going to try to lay it out. It may get confusing, so if you look at the English, it may help you. It says that Moses spoke. He told over the story. V'yisaper Moshe lechotno. He told over the story to his father-in-law et kol asher asa Hashem leparo u'Mitzrayim. You'll find that, if I'm not mistaken, it is verse 8. So Moses told his father-in-law everything that Yud-Kei Vav-Kei had done to Pharaoh in Egypt. That's verse 8. Well, what would he need to tell him? Didn't we just hear that he heard everything? But he heard everything that Elohim did. Now Moses is telling everything that Yud-Kei Vav-Kei did. So he didn't come because he believed that Hashem is the King of Kings. He knew he was powerful. He heard a certain amount of things. I bet maybe he heard everything that Elohim did. So what would there be a need to tell him anything? Didn't he hear everything? We already saw. It says he heard everything that Elohim did. Everything and every detail. Also, in our verse it says Elohim, right? Everything that Elohim did to who? To Moses and to Israel. But later on in verse 8, it says what Yud-Kei Vav-Kei did to Paro and to Egypt. Well, it's a little bit counterintuitive because Elohim is the language, the name, the attribute for din and judgment and harsh things. And on the other hand, the Yud-Kei Vav-Kei is the name that represents mercy. So we're going to pay attention. Pay attention. He's going to explain why it's used in that fashion. But we have to first ask the question. That's very strange at first glance. Any questions at this point? Okay. Also, as we already noticed, the first verse mentions Elohim, and verse 8 mentions the Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. There's also another difference that we didn't notice. So in the first verse, it mentions Moshe and Israel. But later on, in that same verse, it says, in verse 1, it does say Yud-Kei Vav-Kei took out Israel, but it doesn't say took out Moses. Ki hotzei Hashem es Yisrael. So only the Yud-Kei Vav-Kei is mentioned by Yisrael alone. It doesn't mention, when it mentions the Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, fine. Now there's another verse where Yisro, either you translate it as rejoice, or you can translate it as he had goosebumps. V'yichad Yitro al kol hatova asher oso Yud-Kei Vav-Kei liYisrael. You'll find that, I think that's verse 11, 9. Look at 9. Jethro rejoiced over all the good that Hashem had done for Israel. So again, you see the Yud-Kei Vav-Kei only by Israel. But what does this mean here? There's no mention of Moshe here. Also, it says V'yisaper Moshe lechosno, when it's right after Moses tells his father-in-law the story. Again, I mean, apparently it's the first time he's telling him, but it's the second time he's hearing something. But he's now hearing what Yud-Kei Vav-Kei did to Paro and to Egypt. Now, what is his response? He says, Ato yedati ki gadol Hashem. Now I know how great Hashem is. He didn't know how great Hashem was until he heard additional information, correct? That would be in verse 11. Now I know that Hashem is greater than all the gods. But that's not where he ends. He says, for in the very matter in which the Egyptians had conspired against them. What does that add? What is that adding? I'll give you a little hint because it's just, I see you guys are on the edge of your seats. It hints to the idea of midah keneged midah. The Egyptians wanted to throw us into the river, and someone succeeded. They wanted to kill us by drowning us. And what did we see happen to them in the end? Exactly what Yisro understood, that now I know that Yud Kei Vav Kei is greater than all the gods, for in the very matter in which the Egyptians had conspired against them. So, I'm not sure if I'm finished, let me just make sure. So he wants to know why immediately when he heard all that Yud Kei Vav Kei did to Moshe and Israel. What, he didn't know that? He didn't know that God was the God of gods when he heard originally? And it was only after Yisro heard all that, one second, right. V'yishma Yisro es kol asher asa Elokim l'Moshe. So we have a lot of things to work through, but he wants to make an introduction with two major principles. And if you look on 14 and 15 on page 5, the two major principles that he wants to teach us and get through to us, and we'll be able to see it clearly in the text, is number one, that tzaddikim overturn harsh judgment. I'll say it in Hebrew. Shahatzaddikim mahafchim midat hadin l'rachamim. And what do Rishonim do? Beheflik zeh. That righteous people, and there's plenty of them, they're able to turn negative judgments, turn it around into mercy. And Rishonim take what seems to be good and overturn it into bad or negativity. And that principle we're going to really drive home tonight. The second principle that we're going to discuss, so everything we got up until now was pretty much a part of an introduction, that Shebizmanahu at that time, and believe me, even today, at this time, I know plenty of people that are like this, that Ba'olam Rabim Ma'ameh Haaretz, that there are many ignorant people in the world, Shutoim B'ta'us Shel Mi'ani. They make a grave mistake in the understanding of the nature of God. When God said, Anochi, I am the Lord your God. What is that? So we're going to get to understand, I think, at least some of what it means that the first commandment, when God told us he is the Lord our God. Who is God? What is the nature of God? So he starts by discussing the second idea, that many people, they make this mistake and they think they're not even aware of it. They call themselves monotheists. They may call themselves Christians. But guess what? They actually believe in two gods. That one rules over the good and one rules over the bad. Negative stuff. And according to their philosophy, both, if they believe that way, that there are two gods, that means they're both weak. And a real true searcher will understand that and continue searching for the one true God, if he's a real searcher. So if all you had was the one God that was just bad, people, I don't know what they call it, maybe they think it's the Satan is a God. So he's very wise when it comes to doing evil. Extremely wise when it comes to scheming and doing evil. But when it comes to doing good, he has no power. Doesn't know how to do it. It's so obvious that anybody who's a true searcher would never succumb and believe and put themselves under the wings of such a deity. I'll just read what he says. Pshita she'en rui likanes takas kanafav likablo lelokai. To receive him as your God. Because who is such a fool that would turn in that direction? And what about someone who believed only in a God who's good? Right? I mean, there's many people who that's their God. I'm not saying Santa Claus, but a man with a big beard in the sky. And all he does, he only has control over the good. He has no ability at all to do any evil, even to those who hate those who believe in him. Oh my gosh, can you imagine? You believe in a God and he can't even protect you because he can't do any evil to those that hate you. If that's the case, it's worthless to serve such a deity. And it doesn't matter even to serve him at all, whether you serve him or not, because he can only do one thing. Certainly not fitting to receive him as a God, or even to receive and accept both of them. Let's say, okay, yin yang, or whatever, certain religions have. So two gods. So they contradict each other. You'll never be satisfied. One of your gods is constantly cursing, and the other God is constantly blessing. You're in a mess. So what did Yisro hear from the beginning? We understood here from the very beginning all that Elohim did to Moses and Israel. But he didn't yet hear anything bad. He only heard the good. Right? Look at the verse again. Right? If we think about that medrash, Yisro, the minister of Midian, the father-in-law of Moses, heard everything that God did to Moses and to Israel. To the good side, to the good. And what did he do? Split the sea, gave the Torah. He saved them. We don't know what happened to Amalek, but he saved the Jews. Saved the Jews from Amalek. Split the sea, they ended up walking on dry land. We don't know anything about the Egyptians drowning. It doesn't say, right? So, all he knows is to Moses and to Israel, he did all kinds of good, kind acts. Like what he heard, the splitting of the sea and the war with Amalek. Nevertheless, he had not yet heard, he only heard that the sea split and they walked on dry land. But he didn't yet hear that Pharaoh and his army drowned. So too with Amalek. He only heard that they came to do bad to the Jews, but the Jews were saved. Therefore, we need to explain when it says later that it was Yud-Kei Vav-Kei that took him out. So he only heard about the good stuff. About Yetziat Mitzrayim. So what do you sort of think at this point? Perhaps the God that is the God of the Jews is just the good God, with the white beard, the sky. But he didn't hear, let me just read in Hebrew. It was the God that was only controlling good. But he wasn't yet satisfied to receive him as the God of gods, as the King of kings. Perhaps there's a God out there who's greater. Who's what? Who's Moshel, HaMoshel Achatovos, Val Haraos Ke'echad, who actually controls and has the abilities over everything, over what is good and what transpires as bad. The only reason he came was to return Moses' wife and his children. It was only afterwards when Moses tells his father-in-law all that Yud-Kei Vav-Kei did to Paro and Mitzrayim, meaning that all of those plagues and hits and, what we call the negative stuff, which who did? Yud-Kei Vav-Kei did in Egypt and at the Yam Suf. Then he saw and he explained to him, Hinezeh ha'elokim ha'moshel atovos v'yal ha'rois ke'echad. He understood, he saw that now I understand this is the God who is in control. When he says, Ata yadati, now I know, ki gadol Hashem, mikol ha'elohim, I know that Yud-Kei Vav-Kei is above and is greater than all the other gods. And only then it's fitting to receive this God and to enter under the shade of his wings, or the protection of his wings. But perhaps you might come and say, perhaps, nevertheless, there are still two gods. You're going to be stubborn. Yesh HaMoshe al Toivus Heitiv Israel. Maybe he only does good for Israel, and he does evil to them. There's no, right? We know better. Unfortunately, we, after all of our trials and tribulations, we know better. But maybe you'll think, okay, this is the good God. Only does God good to Israel, and to Israel's enemies only does bad. But what did we see? We saw that God acts midah keneged midah in every aspect. It says, now I know that Hashem is greater than all gods, for in the very matter in which the Egyptians conspired against them. The word Egyptians isn't even used, but it's understood. But in every aspect, we see that they schemed, and we already said this, right? And it's not just by the children. Each one of the plagues was midah keneged midah. Everything. So at the same time, there's a punishment to the ones that hate us, and there's a relief and towards redemption on the other hand. It's simultaneous. It's not two gods, or the one God that's even split, like a split personality God. Nothing like that. He's got absolute mastery over everything. And this is what Yisro understood. He understood that the actual plagues that Hashem inflicted upon Egypt was for the desired good, the result in goodness for the Jews, for Israel. Lefi shehera lehem Paro, because Paro wanted bad to come upon the Jews, also keneged ratzon Hashem. So he went against the will of God, and therefore he was judged measure for measure. And he says the proof for this, that it was Elokim, shezeh Elokim asher hera leparo, hu asher chevez b'tuvatan shel Yisrael. It's the name Elokim, which we know is that attribute of judgment that was doing the bad to them, but was doing the good to us simultaneously. Therefore, what do you conclude? V'adai mi'el echad yatzu shnei hafachim elu, v'hu gadol mikol Elohim. He understood with absolute certainty that it's one God, that the two seemingly distinct opposite effects were emanating from the same entity, deity, and this is the greatest of all gods. I want to just stop here for a second, just to drive this point home. We think about the sun. The Kliyakar uses this as an example in other Parshiyot. The sun is the sun, it's not changing. It's still there in the sky, and yet it has a different effect on what? Take, for example, a piece of wax. You ever leave a candle in your window by accident, and you come home from work, and the candle is no longer straight? Okay, it's happened to the best of us. Something hard can become soft. If you took an egg and left it on the roof of your car, that egg, we know what's inside, it's supposed to be soft. So after, if you were living in Arizona, or maybe, I don't know where, somewhere in the Middle East, and you left it out in the middle of July, August, guess what happened? It would be hard. It would be hard. Something soft. The same sun can turn something that's soft hard or hard soft. But not. It's about the mekablim. It's about the side on the receiving end. That's where the blessings and the curses occur. It's what we do matters. It's about us. God, his hashpah is all-powerful, and what we do is going to determine whether it's a blessing or a curse. Another example. You go out to and we all have washing machines today, but let's say we didn't. And we went out and we did our laundry by the side of the river. And we were out there a few hours. And we came in, we looked in the mirror, and our faces are a little bit darker than it was a few hours ago. Not because we're coming out of the sunlight and now it's a dark room, but because the sun affected our skin. So it can make something dark. But what about the clothing that you laundered and you hung it up in the sun? It's fading, right? It can make something light. It's the same sun, the same energy. It's what is on the receiving end that's going to make all the difference. So back to this point where he says, Kibidavar asher zatu aleim. So this was measure for measure. If this God only controlled the negative, if that would be the case, then all the evil that would occur, we would just say it's all Hashem's will. So So how is it that at the same time, simultaneously, it's actually benefiting the Jews? Doesn't make sense. It must be that this God is the God of all gods, who's able to simultaneously. He's not just good. He's not just evil. I mean, evil is not the right word, but producing negative effects. He's all powerful. That with absolute certainty, it's this God who has desired effect to bestow goodness upon Israel, and to constantly bestow goodness. And now we understand when Yisro says, the narrator says that Yisro was rejoiced over the good. Right? I think it was verse 9. Jethro rejoiced. Now, it's an important Rashi in that every convert, first of all, we're all converts. The whole nation converted at Mount Sinai. Everyone who was there and everyone who wasn't there. I'm not going to go too much into some of the ideas behind conversion. I mean, maybe I should spend a little bit of time on it. So even though Israel said yes, Na'aseh v'nishma, and each nation said no, that's as a nation. There were individuals of those nations that desired and wanted to join and wanted to accept. But as a nation, they're part of the group. So that soul is reincarnated maybe more than once until it finally is able to join up and fulfill what it originally said. Perhaps Na'aseh v'nishma as well. Not sure, but it definitely wanted to join up. And it spent, I don't know how many lifetimes, or at least in this lifetime, a active search until, bam, like a shock. This is what I've been looking for my entire life. And I could never elaborate, and I can never describe, whatever it was. So you hear even Yisro, he's coming. We don't know if it's before Matan Torah or after Matan Torah. Okay, we're going to leave that whole discussion aside. But something attracted him. He may not even have been sure why. Maybe he had what we call selfish motivation, or survival. But it brings him to the point where he's able to then get clarity and understand and go the full route. So it says he rejoiced over all the good. He already heard the good. Nevertheless, he wasn't yet happy in them. Oh, this is what I want to tell you about. So when we say yichad, either means happy, or it could mean he was disturbed. He got goosebumps Because once he heard about the Egyptians drowning, even though, yes, now he understands and connects with God, on one level he's found what he's been looking for his whole life. At the same time, he's not just burdened, he's actually kind of hurt that non-Jews, remember he was a non-Jew at one point, are affected. So, did I bring it down? Yeah. So in number 16, he does bring it, but I'm going to just bring it now. No, that's not it. I didn't bring it. But I think I have it here anyway. It's a very important Rashi. I find it so easily. I'll just tell you what it says. Basically, on that verse, we know what the verse is, 9, verse 9. Or 11, you should see. 9. Rashi says right there that, yes, it means that he rejoiced, Jethro rejoiced, that's its simple meaning, but there's an Agadic medrash that interprets the word as his flesh became prickly, developed goose flesh. I don't know if that means goosebumps, but it's a reaction that's not so positive, because mitzar al ibud Mitzrayim, he was aggrieved over the destruction of Egypt. This is explained by the popular saying. This is what Chazal teach us. Remember, it says 36 times in the Torah to love a convert. It says if one is a convert or even a descendant of one, already 10 generations, do not disgrace an Armenian or any other non-Jew in his presence. In other words, don't disgrace or degrade any non-Jew in the presence of a convert. First of all, you should never disgrace anyway. But what is it teaching us? That there's a sensitivity. It's still with them, even up until the 10th generation, perhaps. Not to make goyish jokes, not to make jokes or to speak disparagingly. Although the truth is, there is a mitzvah to talk about other religions, the false religions disparagingly. So I guess one has to be sensitive, even in that case. Okay, I'll leave it at that. Now, where are we at? There's just so much stuff. We may have to make this a part 2.
Number 16 is the last.
You're following the English, yeah. We didn't get very far, did we? Okay. So I'll tell you where we left off over here. Remember, all the good was used Elohim in respect to both Moses and Israel. Because it was the combination of both Moses and Israel, the skut, the merit they both had as being tzaddikim, that was able to turn Elohim into Rachamim. The Shikoach Shem Elohim, also lehem, it was the power of that name of Elohim, which is strict judgment, that all the tovos happened. So if we go, now we're on 16, it says the angel of God, right? This angel of God protected the Jews when they were throwing ballistic missiles, and this happens today in Israel. When the Hamas and the Hezbollah and whoever else out there, too many to name, we have the hand of God that's protecting us. It's look at these words. It's in Hebrew, V'yisa Malach Elokim. It shouldn't have said Malach Yud Vavke. All the places, it always says. Look at Rashi. Everywhere it says angel of Hashem, Yud Vavke. But here it says the angel of Elokim. Everywhere in Scripture, Elokim denotes God's attribute of judgment. This teaches that at the moment the Israelites were being judged whether to be saved or to perish with the Egyptians. But we were saved. So there's an opportunity to turn Elokim around. Ki shlucho shel shem Elokim halach lahatzil es Yisrael. That the sending or the agency of this name, of this attribute of God, of Elokim, actually went and saved the Jewish people. Aval, it was just Israel. What happened to Moses? So Moses wasn't mentioned. So what I'll tell you, I'll cut to the chase a little bit. Moses was never enslaved in Egypt. He was never enslaved. He didn't need saving. We don't think about that. I mean, the Jews were steeped into such hard slavery. But Moses was never a slave, never did any slavery in his life. So he says, Ki hotze Hashem es Yisrael, Yud Vavke saved Israel. Schut Yisrael below schut Moshe. Lo maspik lahafik din rachmim. But he was taken out from Egypt. It was only Israel. Moses lo haya beklal shibud Mitzrayim. Moses was never enslaved in Egypt. And now we understand also why it said later, Yichad Yisrael kol hatov asher Yud Vavke did to Israel. Because he tzilu miyad Mitzrayim. It's all about being saved from Egypt. This Hatzalah was for Israel, not for Moses. And now we understand why it also says Yud Vavke alone. Because when it comes to Rishayim, they turn over Midas HaRachamim to Midas HaDin. So when Moses, when Moses tells Yisrael, V'yisaper Moshe lechasno es kol asher also Yud Vavke, to Paro and to Mitzrayim, it was the switch up. It was the Shem HaMiyuchad. It was the Yud Vavke that reflects about the Rachamim. Also, Lem Kol HaRois. It was through the Rachamim that he did the opposite of what you would think. It's counterintuitive. And you can see it in the next verse, which is, it's 14:24, Exodus 14:24. It came about in the morning watch that the Lord looked down on the Egyptian camp. And which Lord? It's Yud Vavke. That he looked down over the Egyptian camp through a pillar of fire and cloud. So this is the looking down to what? Look at Rashi, to destroy them. It's the Yud Vavke that's going to destroy the evil. It's the Elokim that's going to save, in the Rachamim kind of in sense. Just another idea. He wants to kind of go through this idea a second time to clarify the difference, the distinctions in the different names that God uses in the following way. Again, when it came to the good, Elokim's used. When it comes to the negative things, translated as evil, it's using the Yud Vavke. To remove from the heart of anybody who would make a mistake by saying the following. That after the fact that these two names are very different, one is only going on Rachamim, the other one is going on judgment, that maybe, perhaps, God forbid, there's two deities? No. That's why he mentions specifically by the good, the name of Elohim, and by the bad, the Ra'os, the name of Rachamim, of mercy, to teach you again, to drill it home, that all of them emanate from one God. And the difference is the Makablim. The difference is, are you good or bad? It's about you, right? The Shinui Bon Mitzad Makablim. And the Dugma, the example the Gemara brings, Shemazkira Midas Yom Balayla or Midas Laila Biyom. Like they explained in Parsha's Breshit, it says, Vihi Erev Evoker. Why do you have in right Yom Echad, the first day of creation, you have night and you have day. It's one day, right? I should say, the Erev, there was evening. Vahi Boker, there was morning. Yom Echad, to drive home this point that it all emanates both day and night, light and darkness, from that one God. But most importantly, and I think this is in Zechariah 19, the question is asked based on this verse. And the Lord shall be king over all the earth. On that day shall the Lord be one and his name one. So what's the question one has to ask? Are we saying that today God is not one? What does it mean in the future God will be one? V'yomahu, in that day, Yiyeh Hashem echad u'shmo echad. God will be one and his name will be one. Are we actually saying, or is the prophet saying, right now God is not one, but it will be one? We already see the terminologies being used. We understand that it's one God that has different attributes. So the Gemara asks, what, right now it's not one? So Rabbi Yochanan says, Lo kol mazeh olam haba, that this world is not like the next world. In olam hazeh, in this world, whenever we hear good news, we say Baruch Hatov HaMeitiv. That's the nusach. That's the text of the blessing. Blessed is the Lord our God who bestows goodness. And what happens when we hear in this world negative news, evil news, bad news? Someone, God forbid, passes on, right? Somebody loses a lot of money in the stock market. He says, Baruch Hashem, right? Hashem is the truthful judge. That's all in this world. But what about Olam Haba? Everyone will say, Hatov HaMeitiv. After the Mashiach comes, and everything is so clear, we will understand everything was for the good, even what we perceived as evil. What really is evil? It's just the distancing of God. There's no evil that emanates from him, but he removes himself to the point where the vacuum is filled with the opposite of non-godliness. That's evil. Rotzo bezeh, what does he mean to say? That while we're in this world, what we perceive and the actions of, whether it's Hashem, we see opposite actions, opposite. There's good and there's bad. That's why we have to reveal to these people making these grave mistakes who claim that they're two gods. And their religion and their thoughts and their philosophies are a waste. It's just nifsedet. It's waste. And they say, Ein Hashem echad kavir. They say there's not one God. Also, his name isn't one. That you can Hitkhalfus Hashem is sluchu lehem l'raya. The very fact that there's more than one name for God is even proof that there's more than one God. But really, in Olam Haba, lo yirak hatoivos, lo yurak hatovos. Hine az lo yetzer leminois. So basically, in order to get rid of this heresy, v'yakiru v'yedu ki Hashem echad u'shmo echad, we must bring this idea down that there is only one God and his name is one. V'lo yetzei od leminus, people won't go to heresy. V'lo yiru ulos havchios, they won't see it as distinct different actions. And he claims that this is very clear and proper, everything that he said. Now, in the second verse, all we did discuss so far really was the first verse of Parsha Yitro. But Yisro, it says Yisro took Tziporra. Why do we need to know her name? We know her name. So there's something distinct about her name and her children's names. So certainly not for naught did the Torah teach us the names. It not teach us, review it, and tell us over. So this is what Yisro thought. That, remember, he sent a messenger saying, I'm coming, and you should come out and honor me. Now, he didn't really say honor me, but you should come out and greet me. Now, why was he saying that? not for my sake, for your wife's sake. Say, Bagini Shtecha Tziporra. Come out and greet us for her sake. Because she is like look at the number 20 in Proverbs. As a bird is wandering from its nest, so is a man wandering from his place. Tziporra, no dedet. So it wasn't just that she's like, but he was never at home. He was gone for a long time. So, he wanted to remind him, and he should be cognizant of the fact of the pain that his wife had experienced from the fact that he was wandering all the time from his own home. So now, if you don't come for her sake, remember the children's names are mentioned. Perhaps you'll feel, one second, I'm just going to. V'im lo begin, if it's not for her sake, okay, if it's not for her sake, because a man is not so sensitive and understands the pain of his wife, he should. But if he doesn't, come for the children's sake. Begin bincha Gershom, at least for Gershom. Because what does Gershom represent? The name, when he named him. Ki ger hayiti be'eretz nechriya. I think that would, did I finish it? Okay. So, because he was a stranger. He was a stranger in a strange land. And lahazkir tsar banim. And this should remind him of the pain that his own children had because the father was never around at dinner time. Ki gerim hema, because they were wanderers. V'ata yedata es nefesh hagir. You, Moses, you understand what it means to be a wanderer. So he was chased out of Egypt. So now have some sympathy for your son, Gershom. Ki ger hayita gam ata. And if it's not for his sake, come out for Eliezer. What is Eliezer? Ki Elokai avi be'ezri. For the God of my father came to my help, was my assistance. And we know the Shmo Kashem Rabo. Doma ki ilu ata mekabel panei Shechina. In other words, who was the rabbi of Moshe? God himself. So, you know, if you, basically it's the name of your rabbi, right? Eliezer. So it's based on God is my helper. So come out and give honor like like as if you're coming to the Shechina. Come out and greet your son because he has the name of your Rebbe, which is Shmo Bekirbo. It's mamish in your kishka is this name. Al Kain Hiskir Shmotam. That's why the names are mentioned. Kikak Shalach Olav Yisro. And he sent message to Israel. Yisro sent message. Shiase Begin Ishto. The message was, come out for your wife. Because she was like a bird that was wandering from nest to nest. And on account of the tsar, this pain that she carried with her, it's worthy to honor her and to come out and greet her. and also on account of your children, your son, who was a ger, like a ger without a father. So too, if also on account of the name Eliezer, because as if you're coming out and greeting Hashem himself. And this is just an interesting piece. You should know that the very first Tana, the very first mention of any rabbi in all of Shas, in the entire oral Torah, is Rabbi Eliezer, the first Mishnah of Brachos. And Moshe was able to see the future and all the sages, and he actually prayed to Hashem that he should have an Eliezer that comes through him, that Eliezer does come through him, and he named his child Eliezer. It goes on. Okay, should we continue? Okay. It says in verse 12 that Yisro took Zvachim le'Elokim. So he's now making sacrifices to Elokim, not to Yud Kei Vav Kei. So the Meforshim are very confused. All karbanos, it's never mentioned Elokim. Lo nizkar lo el v'lo Elokim. It's Yud Kei Vav Kei. It's only Ki'im Hashem HaMiyuchad. All the karbanos that we give, it's Yud Kei Vav Kei. But here, Yisro offers to Elokim. V'kan hizkil Elokim. V'yomer ani liyashev zeh. So the Kli Yakar wants to resolve this according to what he wrote above. Shekol hatovos, all the good which Moses, which Yud-Kei Vav-Kei did for Moses in Israel, was always in the name of Elokim, because of that concept that tzaddikim overturn din terachimim, and all that evil happens in the world, right? The evil that happens, Hashem did to Paro and to Egypt with the Shem Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. Because the Rishayim Mahafkim, because the evil people, they switch it over from Rachamim to Din. That's why Yisro offered up to Elokim regarding all the goodness. He was Sameach V'Lev Tov. He was totally content with a good heart. V'notin Hadoyah L'Shmo Yisbarach, and he was giving thanks to God on all the goods, all the good things which he bestowed upon him. Avalo Sameach Al Mifalatan Sham Mitzrayim. But he was not completely happy about the fact that the Egyptians were drowned. That was done through the name Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. Therefore, he made the offering. He didn't make the offering to the Shem Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. And he says this is a raya, this is a proof that what he was thinking about this other Rashi, the other part of that Rashi, that he was mitzayer, that he was a little bit pained on the downfall of the Egyptians. And that's why it uses the language of Yichad. We use, in other words, it's like double entendre. It can mean this, simultaneously it means that. So we see Rashi, even though Rashi might bring down two midrashim, and you look at them and say, wow, it's either this or it's that. Guess what? It can be both. So he says, "L'chak nochadak lashon yichad," because there's mashmud lashon simcha and lashon chidudin. It's both a language of rejoicing and goosebumps. On all the good that happened to Israel, he was happy, and upon the Egyptians, he wasn't so happy. He had that goosebumps. Okay, so I wish you all a great week, and I hope that carry on.